When it comes to everything fantasy football, you have to ask one question. Don't you deserve a fighting chance? And now, welcome to Fighting Chance Live with your hosts, Kevin Tompkins and Scott Fishbowl 9 winner, Gary Haddow.
Welcome to Fighting Chance Live. We're back here, episode 5, and we got some great guests with us. First off, I will go to our freshly haircutted Gary Haddow.
That's me.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. I got the wife to finally give me a trim after last week's fiasco where I just looked like a ragged old man. And here I am looking fresh. Wanted to make sure I impressed my friends Murf and Stocks for coming over from... Well, we'll get to that, but coming over from 5YardRush. So thank you guys so much for coming on here.
Thanks very much for having us. Thanks for inviting us to the party. I would have got a haircut, but I don't trust my wife to do it or risk divorce. So I did the opposite and put a cap on because...
There we go.
I wish I had hair.
It's literally out of control now. It's like weed. The beard is ridiculous. It's the longest it's ever been. So I would love a haircut, but apparently, just telling you that this isn't from me. This is just from other people. It's not cool to have a haircut anymore. I'm just saying.
It looks like you went somewhere and people are like, wait, you went and got your haircut? Are you kidding me? It's like, no. My wife watched a 4-minute YouTube video and somehow did this.
I've decided I'm going to just keep going and just see if I can go full Chewbacca. So that if they ever do a remake of Star Wars, then I'm it. Like, I don't even need the costume. I'm already like there.
Disney bought it, so there's going to be at least a dozen more. So
exactly,
it's in the bag.
Thank you guys for coming in. This is awesome. I'm so happy. I mean, I remember this was it was about 6 months ago when I was on 5YardRush with Murf after the Scott Fishbowl win. I think you actually were one of the first podcasts I did, so that was fantastic. I had so much fun, and here we are, having done some drafts recently together. And Stocks, we've never actually really spoken together, so I've heard your voice. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, that's Stocks. Like, this is fantastic. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good, man. I appreciate you having us on. This is an absolute, I suppose it's an honor and a blast, but yeah, we did a draft recently, and I'm not sure I took the best approach to it in the Superflex draft. That's one
That's
way
right,
of
not
looking
Gary.
at it.
Who are your quarterbacks?
You both absolutely goofed that draft. I was sitting there like, I'm just loving this. I'm going to sit back.
No. I did not goof it. I just built for next year. I'm just starting a year after everyone else. My team is solid. My quarterback's stuck. But when I get the 101 next year, I'm all good.
So
and anyway, if Jared Stidham is the guy in New England, then happy days.
Hey, I'm not complaining. I got Lamar Jackson and Mahomes, so I'm good there.
Who's your starting running backs there, Gary, in that team?
Dude, seriously, like, you don't have to bring it up. I got Penny, who I love. I have Royce Freeman and Henderson. Absolute garbage, but we'll figure that part out later.
I love it.
I do have very good wide receivers, so I'm comfortable with that.
Oh yeah, listen,
so
you boys have some elite rooms and some absolute holes. I mean,
yes.
I just went fairway. Just might be a little bit boring and a little bit too predictable and a bit chalky, but you know what? I'm going to be there or thereabouts every time.
So for any of our listeners,
it's called Fighting Chance Fantasy, right? You got to give yourself a chance, which is to actually have players who can play in the entire roster selection. That's
okay. Well, coming back to some of these players, I'm sure, but Penny is going to be there playing, even if he starts on the pub. Royce Freeman, like, I don't know, whatever. No, honestly, Nyheim Hines is going to be my RB3, and then Henderson is going to be getting some work. I don't care what people say about Akers. Like, he didn't just lose his job. So I'm comfortable given that my running back, my quarterbacks are going to outscore other people's entire, other fleet of players. So Stocks is the opposite.
Yeah. I can't wait. I genuinely can't wait. That league is hilarious. That's probably the fun. That's probably the most fun I've had the draft in a while, other than live drafts. It was awesome.
So for anybody that doesn't know or can't understand what these silly accents are that are coming from Murf and Stocks, they're coming from down under. It's quite exciting. They're actually from the UK. So they have a podcast over there. You guys want to tell us all about 5YardRush, and I want to know where it came from. And for each of you, then how the heck did you get into the NFL and start watching proper football, none of this weird playing with the ball on the ground type stuff? So let me know. Give us the details.
I suppose I should start, considering it started in my dining room. Me and my best friend, we were in a league together, and we just decided, well, let's do a podcast so we can just rip the rest of the members of our league. And that's pretty much how it started. And we started in week 5, I think, of the season. And then, all the way through the season, we only had 10 listeners or 8 listeners because they were the 8 other people in the league. And then we did a bit of, it was just, I guess by the end of it, we had a few more. And then I don't know when it was like week 1 of the next season, Murph, he left. Is that? Yeah,
it was like the end of preseason, because you had a few guests week 1, week 2, week 3. I was week 1, week 3. I think you had someone else on week 2, and then we kind of decided to move on from week 4, I think.
Yeah, and then I said to Smurf, do you want to come on? Because my mate's left, and I don't really want to sit on my dining room table and do this on my own. And so Murph jumped on, and we've not looked back, really. It's gone from strength to strength and gone like an Exocet missile, so it's good.
How long ago was that?
This is our 3rd season together, Murph. So so 4 years ago.
So 2018 is when I joined, so you kept going 2017. So the pod's in its 4th year. I'm in my 3rd year.
It's amazing. You should give a list just for anybody that doesn't know about it. Just give a list of the guests that you guys have. You guys get top-notch guests. It's so awesome.
Yeah, it's
Gary Haddow. He came on once.
He's a legend.
What an absolute hero. I mean, in fact, no one else really matters other than Gary himself. I mean, he won Scott Hansen has been on. We've had Mark Andy Holloway, Jason Moore was on our 200th, which was really cool. Joe Pisapia. We've had Ross Tucker's been on. Joe Dolan's been on. All the guys from Fantasy Pros have been on. It's been exciting, and during this time, people have been really gracious with their time. So we've had most of the major journalists over here in the UK that cover the sport. People have been covering it for a very long time, and we've got some really big guests in the pipeline. I mean, I can't really. I hate to like sort of.
No, that's fine.
But we've got a former GM coming on, and one of the leaders of fantasy coming on as well. So it's going to be an exciting summer. And if you haven't heard of us before and you're sort of hearing our goofy voices for the first time, then hope you enjoy. As for how I got into the NFL, I actually lived in Florida for 6 years, just under 6 years, from the year 2000 up to sort of late 2005. So I lived in Orlando, so I'm a Bucks fan, if you haven't worked out from the hat. And because they were the nearest team, it helped that they were good. I mean, Jacksonville is a little bit further, but they were nothing. I mean, they were formed in 95, and they were not really on TV and kind of a joke, really. Mark Brunell, I think, was still the quarterback then. He wasn't bad, but it was kind of a nothing team, and they weren't really popular. So still aren't, funny enough. So nothing's changed in 20 years. Sorry, Jags fans. But yeah, I got into all sports there in Florida, and was lucky enough in my 5.5-year stint in Florida to watch the Bucks win the Super Bowl, and I was there for that, Super Bowl 37. I watched the Marlins. I used to go watch them sometimes and watch them win the World Series over the Yankees. I watched the Lightning win the Stanley Cup before the season was held out. The following year, and then I watched the Magic in the playoffs every year, watched the Bucks in the playoffs every year. I left Florida and it all went to you know what. So I keep writing to the Florida Tourist Board, like, you kind of need me, but they haven't been taking my calls or letters. But maybe this podcast might help. I don't know, but I don't think it's all me, but I clearly bring some sort of vibe.
70% at least.
I was going to say half, but sure. So that's how I got into it. Fantasy football from 2000, been playing 20 years, which is scary. That's a scary thought, and been watching the Bucks ever since. So I took a couple of years off, I guess, when I first moved back because no one was really into it. But other than that, been pretty strong. Stocks has got a cool story how he got into NFL and especially the Broncos.
Spoiler alert.
Well, I wouldn't say it was cool. I mean, my dad brought home a PC mag that had a load of demo games on it, and one of the games was Madden. And you got to play the second quarter, I think, and it was the Broncos versus the Falcons. And the Broncos were winning 21, I want to say 21-14 or something like that. So I picked the team that was winning that half. So it was a 50-50 toss-up between me being a Broncos or a Falcons fan. And here I am, I'm a Bronco. That was a long time ago when like 512 bits of RAM on a computer was massive. And now like terabytes is things, and so yeah, I've been blue and orange ever since. So, yeah, that's pretty much my story of how I got into Denver. But I didn't start playing fantasy until I don't know, 5 years ago, Murf. We met 6 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, so, about 5 years.
Yeah, so probably 7 years. Yeah, 7 years ago I got into fantasy, and then slowly been increasing into exponential leagues, and now I'm looking to go the other way with my leagues because I'm in like way too many.
You're preaching to the choir.
I think it happens to all of us. Kevin, why are you a Packers fan? I don't know if we've ever actually discussed this.
Well, they were my dad's team, and I pretty much took everything, all of his fandoms, just passed them down. So I'm a Yankee fan, Packer fan. And well, he liked the Montreal Canadiens. I like the Rangers, but by and large, football, baseball, that's pretty much why I'm a Packer fan. He liked the colors. That's what my dad liked them. It was the seven. If he can like a team that was as bad in the 70s as the Packers was, then he's a diehard. So
that's fair.
Yeah. I had the Niners in the 90s, or what is that, the 2000s? God, when they just were terrible until they weren't. So I guess we've all been there at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm luckily coming out of a 12-year hiatus of the Bucks really stinking. Assuming that this year goes ahead, if not, it's going to be 13 years. It only took us signing a 42-year-old quarterback and a retired tight end who's decided to come out, and a coach who retired as well. It's only taken a load of old people to come out and make us at least relevant.
I mean, it is Florida.
Exactly. It's a perfect fit. I'm just waiting for Edelman just to come off the boat and just come and join the party, and then we know we're in for a hootenanny.
Yeah, I could see it happening.
Right?
Yeah, man. I think that the Pats drafted. Did they draft Dalton Keene with that 4th round pick? So they traded Gronk for a blocking tight end. Whatever, dude. I mean, the Pats are super confusing this year. So
I think they traded the pick from us. They had a couple, so I think they traded one to move up and get Asiasi. I think that's what they did.
Man, we'll see what happens with them. They're like an entire podcast on themselves. And we'll put them and the Packers together. So we'll just go from there. Yeah. I got one last thing. I want you guys to give a quick chance to pump. I know what this is because I've actually already purchased it. I thought, what better way to support you guys and see what you guys are putting out there? So, Stocks, Murf, tell us about the playbook.
So, it's a book, as it suggests. We've decided
I have already explained it.
And, yep. So, Murf and I have had a load of content all sat together, and we thought, why drip feed this into the website where people are either, we get good views, but we figured if we put it all into one huge place, all of our stuff, and then charged a real small fee for it, that it would be, you could use it towards your draft prep. So what's in there, Murf? We got your PAS metric. You've created your own metric based on streaming. So that's exclusive to the podcast and book. That's in there. We've got strategy guides for all the formats. That's in there as well. So it's not just do this in fantasy football. If you want to play IDP, if you want to play Superflex, if you want to play, standard, half point, full point, there's a strategy in there for each of those. So especially if you're new or learning about the game, they're really handy. But then as an expert, there's a few tips in there as well that you might think, oh, I haven't done that in a while. Maybe I'll apply that. And there's a bit of cross-pollination as well. So it's not just do this to win your league. We sort of we arm you with the information and the knowledge in order to help you make decisions, if that makes sense.
I think the key thing for it as well is fantasy players. We're all fantasy players. That's why we're watching this podcast and stream and we all play it. But we all kind of get into our comfort zone, right? So we get into a league and we we love dynasty leagues. That's what we're going to do. Or we like certain redraft leagues that are PPR or whatever they are. And people get really uncomfortable when it's like, oh, let's do an auction league, which we're not covering, ironically, or an IDP league or a Superflex league or a tight end premium league. And that's kind of the point of this is people don't want to try something new because they're afraid they're going to suck. And that's ultimately because you get into that comfort zone. So it's giving you a guide and at least a strategy to go into a draft and feel a bit confident that you can at least go in and hold your own. And it's okay to, not necessarily expect you to win, but it's like, look, this is how guys might draft in IDP or tight end premium. What's the tight end premium actually worth? And there's a chart that will tell you how important it is to get certain guys or just to bin it. It doesn't matter. And that's kind of the thing. It just gives you strength of just doing something different and giving you a bit of confidence to do it. And, it's just all sorts of different charts and consistency metrics. And Stocks has done a whole thing, which he missed on rookies and breakdowns of all rookie fantasy players. Thought it was funny. He talked about all the stuff I wrote and didn't mention one word of anything he really went into detail on. So, which was cool. And that's why he's such a great guy and why we're such great friends, because he's so modest in what he does. But it's a really cool, like I said, I don't know what it works out to be, like $8 or something like that. We're doing a pre-sale now. So if you get it before the 1st of June, like you did, Gary, and thanks very much for that. It's like $7-ish, and it's big. It's not like just a flounty. It's got like a minimum of 60,000 words in it, and you're not going to read every word because you might not ever want to play IDP. But if you ever want to pick it up, it's there. There's some cool little things I've done on like the perfect draft scenarios and what each round is worth in ADP, looking back at previous ADPs and stuff like that. It's just got loads of data, loads of fun, and just you'll pick something up from it, and you'll find something useful in it. So it's worth the price. And if it's not, and you really hate it, then drop us a message, and we'll probably refund you. Probably shouldn't admit that, but we don't want anybody to walk away and feel like we're duping them, because we put a lot of work into it. It's been a 5-month project, and ultimately, we just want people to really enjoy it. We're not making any money. There's no ads. It's a PDF. We're not making we're not looking to make big money out of this at all. It's about we've done this work, as Stock says. We want to put it out there, and we stand by what it is, and we hope it. Ultimately, our whole goal is to bring a community together, whether that's in the US and the UK. Here in the UK, when we started the podcast, people didn't have 12 friends that often or that commonly, where they could play and set up a league. So they would go and do these crappy NFL.com random leagues with just random people, where people bail after three or 4 weeks, and they're left like getting a pretty poor experience of fantasy football because no one's engaging and no one's having any fun. And that's why we do all these leagues. And that's kind of what the book is. It's just a community thing. We share what we have, and if you love it, great. And if you don't, come and tell us, and like we'll help out, and that's kind of what it is.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
I'm looking forward to reading it. I really, really am.
Well, if I get you an advance copy, we're nearly there. It's a couple of charts need to be put in, and final proofreading and stuff, but it's pretty much there. Probably another few days, and if we get it done and polished, we'll get you an early copy so you can. We'll get your copy early so you can enjoy it.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
but,
that's awesome.
No need to treat us any more special than we already are.
Well, we're in your house, so we feel like we have to. We didn't bring beers or wine, so hey, we'll bring a book instead. That's the sign of a good party. That's what you've been missing out on.
All right, so we're going to jump into the bulk of the show now. So pretty much what we're looking at today is that Kevin made his Dynasty rankings. He also does redraft rankings. You can find him on fightingchancelive.com. He has his rankings all posted up there. And so we're going to jump into his Dynasty rankings. Kevin, just really quick, like what's your process when you go through this? You know, how long does it take you to do this? And sure, it takes a while.
Yeah, these took, approximately, this is over probably a month of, baselining and trying to chart out what I could and, making tiers and stuff like that. So it took a considerable amount of time. I work 40 hours a week too. So pretty much a lot of my downtime, and thank God for my girlfriend for being patient while I'm doing a lot of that stuff. But it took quite a while, and I was pretty much working on Dynasty and the redraft, which didn't take as long, but kind of concurrently. So a lot of labor went in to those rankings, and it's something I really like to do, and kind of like to find a niche in there where trying to put out rankings and keeping them updated, and just going with the flow of everything that's going on, and being fluid with them and changing with an ever-changing NFL landscape.
For sure. Well, I'm excited to get into them, and we're just gonna I kind of just find some stuff and call it out, and we'll have some roundtable discussions pointed at different people, and we'll kind of go from there. And normally I'm a big fan of starting with running backs. We're always probably going to do that. But since we got our mates from over in the UK, we're actually going to switch, drive on the opposite side of the road, and we're going to dive in with wide receivers. So our first question is going to actually come from Murf. And Murf saw that you have Juju at wide receiver 7. Aren't you concerned about the long-term play there and how that's going to impact Juju? What are your guys' thoughts? We'll start with Kevin, and then we'll go to Stocks.
As far as Juju, I know his contract ends at the end of this year. I think he's going to reclaim a lot of the value that he lost. Last season was pretty much a lost season for Juju with backup quarterbacks and just the offensive inefficiency there. But I think he's going to play more in the slot, like he did with Antonio Brown there, and he did a lot of great work in the slot. I think he's going to go back there now that they have outside targets again in that offense with Deontay Johnson, and now they have Chase Claypool, James Washington, guys like that. He can find a home in there and do a lot of damage there. I think he's going to reclaim a lot of his value. The dude is still so young, and he's a top talent at wide receiver, where you're going to have a lot of that longevity just baked into the position in terms of Dynasty.
And I said Stocks, I should have said Murph. This was obviously your question. So I want to know, what's the counter?
For me, I still love Juju. I have him at the very back end of the wide receiver 1. So I'm not coming here with a really ridiculous hot take, like he should be the wide receiver 30 here. I'm thinking he should be nearer to 12. I think I've got him in that 11-12 pincer there. And I guess the reason it was because of some of the names you took over him. You took he's above Evans, he's above Cooper. He's above quite a few players there that have done it and done it consistently, and they're still very young. Whereas with Juju, we've seen 2 great years of production, and in year 3, it didn't happen because of the quarterback. Then you have this Roethlisberger thing. How long is Roethlisberger realistically going to play at a top level in Pittsburgh, coming off an injury? The guy, if you've seen the recent videos in his dieting and fitness strategy right now, it's something. Well, let's just call it the anti-TB12 and stick on brand. I guess that's my worry is we know that he's not going to be there that long. So it's that uncertainty of who comes in next, because the next Steelers quarterback is not on the roster. I think we can all agree with that. Yeah. That unless they, if they go and get someone like a Cam Newton, then all of a sudden he has some appeal and some value. But I worry about that insecurity of what happens next. Whereas you look at guys like Evans, okay, that he's got 2 years of Brady, and then after that there is a bit of uncertainty as to what happens. But he's also done it with Winston. And regardless of what you think of Winston, the turnover machine and everything, he's not an elite quarterback, and he still put the numbers up. And he's done 1,000 yards every season. Cooper, again, in the situation he's in. I guess for me, it wasn't so much I just think he's a nudge too high, and think that there's just other players I would. But I don't think it's like a ridiculous reach, as I said, that 11 to 12. But I just think there's some guys that you've passed that I think I would rather have than Juju.
Yeah, it's not blasphemy. It's just a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Understandable. With Roth, do you think that he plays like 1.5 years? God, I didn't even know if that's the right way to phrase it. Like over, under, do you think in the next 2 seasons that he will be able to clear, 24 games? Or the next 3 seasons, let's even say it that way. So like, if people are worried about his injury history, is it his injuries or is it just his age? I mean, it seems to be that the crop of 37, 38-year-old quarterbacks that have been great, when they've been healthy, they're all planning to try and do the 40, 41, 42 plan rather than just say, I'm 39 and next year I'm just going to hang it up.
I think he's 1 injury away from finishing.
Okay.
I just think he's taken an entire year rehab, pretty much. He's clearly not in this whole dedication to get there to 45 like TB12 because you can see it in his demeanor. He's already threatened retirement, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think he plays. I don't think he's in love with the game as much as he probably once was. And I think he probably realizes that he is, dare I say it, it's his retirement fund. He's just kind of like, I'll see out my contract, I'll take my money and I'll go because it's too much for me to leave on the table. And I think if he got injured and took an injury settlement, that would kind of be it because I just don't see him. I don't see him having that same desire with that same fire. And I'm not knocking Roethlisberger. For me, he's a Hall of Famer all day long. He's won 2 rings. He has dominated that division for so many years. But the path to them getting to the playoffs now is not winning the division anymore. They're too far behind. And in the time that he's got left, he probably realizes that and thinks, well, I'll take my paycheck. If I get hurt, I'll take my settlement. I'll go and then see what happens. And I think the fact that the Steelers didn't invest in Winston, I think that would have been a perfect fit. You take Winston for a year, and then if Roethlisberger goes down, you've got Winston. Yes, we all know he has flaws, but Mike Tomlin, as he proved last year, is a phenomenal football coach.
Yeah.
Phenomenal football coach. He took a team that was, dare I say it, pretty ordinary on offense, and he coached and schemed them to 9 wins. Like, that's quite impressive, considering, or 8 wins. He got them on the cusp of the playoffs. And that team was like, they were talking about when they traded away their first round pick for Minka Fitzpatrick, everyone was talking about they're going to be a top 5 pick. And they ended up at pick 20. That tells you everything you need to know about the coaching there. And someone like Winston would have benefited from that. So we'll see what happens. But I if you're telling me the over-under is 24, massively under 24, I think he won't see 20 personally. But.
It just seems crazy to me to think that their defense is back to being one of the best in the NFL and that they're not going to do everything they can. It almost makes me wonder if they said we're not going to go after Winston because they think they can get Cam or they can get someone else. You had 2 of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. I think actually the 2 worst quarterbacks in the NFL last year. Like, you have to do something or you have to have so much faith that he's going to at least be around for 2 years because that's probably their window to actually, I mean, they're a playoff team without question in my mind this year, assuming that Roth's there. And so I would imagine they would probably still be there next year. But it'll be interesting to see, and we'll see what happens with Juju. Maybe he switches teams. I always think in my head it's probably going to be too much of a contract, but like, why not get him to Green Bay? You know, there are every team is going to be happy to take a Juju, maybe not the contract, but like, why not specifically target someone like that where you would have Devontae doing his thing, then you have Juju playing his slot role, and all of a sudden you get to recreate the AB Juju magic. So I don't know, maybe I'm just wishful thinking.
But he'll have a huge market, Juju, and he'll get a good payday. I don't think it depends on what happens this season. Yeah. If Roethlisberger goes down, that payday is not going to be as great. He needs Roethlisberger this season as much as anybody. It really all depends what happens to him. I think if he has a year like last year with some injuries and bad quarterback play, he could go. He could hit the market, and then it's a crapshoot. And it's the other reason why I'm just a bit unsure about 7 is you're sitting there thinking like this is a guy who 18 months from now could be on the market and he could go anywhere. And if he goes to somewhere like the Bears, he automatically falls down a board or two. But he could land in the Packers and go up. Yeah. So it's just that uncertainty is why I take a chance on him purely on what he's done, and that's why he's on the fringe of the wide receiver 1 conversation for me. But give me someone like Evans who has got arguably the safest floor of anyone in that top 12, because he doesn't get. I mean, when he gets injured, it's not significant. He doesn't miss lots of games. He does a minimum of 1,000 yards every season. Yeah. He does a minimum of 5 or 6 touchdowns. It's not exciting and it's not flash, but he's going to do it every year until he gets a significant injury or until the quarterback play behind him is going to be really stinky, which I can't see happening for a while.
All right, well, cycling on to a different wide receiver group that, everybody seems to just be through the moon about. We're going to talk about the Cowboys wide receiver room. They all seem to be primed to do just such amazing things. We have, Amari Cooper. They drafted CeeDee Lamb at 17th overall. They already have Michael Gallup, who was looking like he was a stud in the making, or at least a very, very high-end wide receiver too. And yet now there's, a little bit of question marks. I like to think of all 3 of them have question marks. You have Amari that had CeeDee come in. You have CeeDee being the unproven one. And you have Gallup that all of a sudden falls to wide receiver 3 on his team. All that being said, we talked about this at length last week, but where do you guys see stocks? Where do you see this wide receiver room developing? And to me, because this is a dynasty show, it's not just 2020, it's 2021 and beyond. And is everyone going to still be there? Who's going to be the top dog? Or are we just looking at 1A, 1B, 1C?
I just don't know how you can have 3 elite talents in a wide receiver room. Yeah. I just think the investment they made in Lamb has almost forced the hand on Cooper to say, you're going to be too expensive and we're going to have to move on. And we've almost replaced you with somebody who can run. Cooper's one of the best route runners out of college, and Lamb's, he's right there, if not exactly the same. I think they're, apart from Lamb playing the slot a bit more than Cooper, I think they're pretty much the same guy. And Gallup has proved that he's adequate at being the 2, and I think they're happy with him being the 2. So I think, whenever I think Cooper moves on, a bit like Juju, where is he going to go? Who knows? But then I think Lamb and Gallup are definitely the 2 that Dallas want, because Jerry goes after the guys he wants. He makes big splashy moves and he doesn't let his stars go. But then you've got Zeke, you've got Dak with huge contracts, so you can't pay everyone. And the fact that you can get another Cooper a lot cheaper and then say to Cooper, ta-da, see you later. I think that going forward is their plan. And I think actually for fantasy, Dynasty, it's a question mark for me because I don't know when and what happens to Cooper. But in redraft, I think there could be a case of they're all good, but I don't think, especially for Cooper, I don't think he's going to return his cost because of there's too many mouths to feed. I just think they're all going to eat into each other's production.
So with that being said, because I think we all pretty much agree with that, so where would Amari rank? Kevin has him at 8, and I don't disagree with that because I think he's going to be awesome this year. Moving forward, who knows, like you said. So where do you think we'll just say a range. You don't need a specific number, but, are you looking in the low teens, high teens, later than that, mid-teens?
I think low teens, because his time at the Raiders proved that if he doesn't have good quarterback play or isn't schemed right, he only goes off every now and again. So I don't think you can throw all your chips on a guy who was good last year at Dallas, because if like Murf said with Juju, if he goes to the Bears, then he's down. And Cooper's already proved that if he's on a bad team, he's falling down the ladder anyway. So it's not as if you turn around and you say, well, Antonio Brown, it doesn't matter where he goes because he's one of the best wide receivers that's ever played. It's Cooper, and yeah, sure, he's good, but he's shown at the Raiders he's not great. So for me, I would almost not take him in Dynasty at where his value is, or even a little bit less, because of the concern I've got.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think for me, the key thing you got to understand is what's the get out or where it is. Realistically, he's going to be there until the end of 2021 because the contract's too much. It's too much. I can't see a team coming in at the start of 2021 for him. Now, the contract on Cooper the get out is $6 million at the end of the 2021 season, so they could pay the $6 million dead cap. That I don't think Jerry's going to pay dead cap. I think he trades him. I don't think they get much, but I think they will get an asset and someone will be desperate. Now, again, following up from Stocks' point, if you're looking at the fact that he's going to be commanding $20 million a year for the remaining 3 years of his contract, it's going to be a team with a lot of cap room. A team with a lot of cap room tends to be a team that's not competing. If you're in spending 90% of your cap, you tend to be competing, or you're just bad at cap management. But typically, these teams that have a lot of cap, I think the Colts is the exception. But everywhere else tends to be these teams have a lot of cap room, are teams that are just, they need players. Miami, I think, has the most cap room available right now. And that's why they went so hard in free agency. And that's, that could be his landing spot, and that could be great with Tua. It might not be. So I guess there is some reservation there. I because of the fact he's going to return you 2 very good years before that happens, and he's still going to be an asset, I still would put him in that back end of the wide receiver 1 conversation. I don't think the 8 is massively out, because he is still going to eat there. It's going to take Lamb a little bit of time. But I think it depends your position. I think if you're in a win now mode and you want to win your championship in a startup in the first 2 years, then don't be afraid, but just be wary that by year 3, he could be a declining resource. And that's what you got to be a bit careful for. If you're building for the future, you're probably going to pass on Cooper for that same reason, the same reason you probably pass on Juju. Just too much uncertainty. You probably go with a fairway ball, maybe look at someone like a DJ Chark, or go with one of the rookies, or even go really safe and go with someone like Terry McLaurin.
And I think to your point as well there, Murph, especially in Dynasty, I've done 2 Dynasty startups recently, and I think people build way too much for the future. So if people are panicking on people like Amari Cooper, you could get great value. If you're going to build a win now team, you could get even better value than Cooper is right now, because people are panicking on him because they're building for the future. So Cooper could actually be a good value if you are win nowing.
I agree with that.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Kevin, these are obviously your rankings. So, you have Amari at 8, CD at 18, Gallup at 32. So, with CD, are you looking to spend up on him in your drafts and make sure that you get him because of what his upside is? Or are you thinking that he's just still a little too rich for even for like a dynasty startup draft?
Well, in startups, the wide receivers are slipping. You've got your big 5 running backs. You got your 2 quarterbacks. It seems every startup I've done, I don't think the first wide receiver was drafted until about 108. It seems like. So those guys are really a value, especially Lamb. If he goes 107, 108, I've had those picks, and I took him in one of my picks. I think I've seen Lamb go as low as like 110, just because somebody really, valued Keyshawn Vaughn, and, you see those guys. But, Lamb's upside's obviously wide receiver 1 in Dallas. And as Murph said, they've got that out for Amari Cooper's contract. I don't think he's going to be there long term, but you're talking about Cooper, who pretty much commands a 25% target share in that offense, no matter what. But like he said, we don't know where he's going to land in the cap space. He could land in a place like Miami, which would be, a great fit with an ascending quarterback, ascending offense, or he could land somewhere like maybe the Jets, and there you go. So, but I've always been pretty bullish on Cooper. His booms are massive. He's very volatile as an asset, but that's kind of why I valued him where I did. Because you look at the guys that I have ranked around him. I've got him just below Juju at 8, and I've got him, Evans on the other side of him. We don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback room. We're talking about a 2-year window with Brady, and then after that, who knows? But he is consistent. So that's why I've got Cooper where he is. I just really like that he does command that large target share. He's got that opportunity. But after the 2 years and the out in his contract, I mean, we'll see what happens. But that's why I've got him where I've got him.
And I think that where you've got CD ranked is spot on. I've got him maybe a spot higher, but in that sort of range because of that. The one I think here that's overpriced is Gallup, because I really like Gallup. I think Gallup is an exceptional talent, but we talk about so often in fantasy football, very few teams can keep 2 wide receiver relevant. You're looking at, in this current landscape, the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, that you've got 2 players that were likely to finish in the top 24 wide receivers. I think I'm about it. I don't think there's anyone else. You could make a case for Denver. I don't know if they'll do it this year, but maybe going forward, that could be an option. I've never seen a team make 3 wide receivers extremely relevant. I think the Rams a couple of years ago when they had Cooks, but you still had a guy that was in the 40s or the high 30s. Like it still isn't. I think Gallup is just you're buying Gallup in the hopes that Cooper goes, and I think 32 is a bit high for me. I think especially if you're talking about the top 58 players in a draft, I think that there wouldn't be good value to take him at what would essentially be the end of the 6th. Right now, if he falls to like the 9th, then I think you're starting to get into that range of outcomes of, yeah, sure, I'll buy him because, like Stock said, I think he's the one that isn't going to go anywhere. Yeah. Because if CD busts, which is in the range of outcomes, unlikely, Gallup will be fine. If Cooper goes, Gallup will be fine. But while there's 3 of them there, he is likely the 4th read right now in that team. Or he's the 3rd about to be the 4th read. Yeah. Because you still got Zeke there as well. Yeah. I don't like spending that high on a 4th read. And I think until something moves, he's kind of like, he's a guy you're stashing. And if you get him cheap, then it's worth stashing because he'll do you for bye weeks and things like that. You chip in, it won't be great, but it won't be bad. But you're waiting for the payoff on that. And it is a 2-year payoff. Unless Lamb stinks, then it's a bit sooner than that. So I'd move him down the board a little bit. If you get him in the 9th, 10th round, then I think you're in that range there where there's a lot of guys you could factor in of taking. That's kind of when your older veterans come in, your Edelmans, your Marvin Joneses, and you're thinking I can either go for a veteran for a 2-year spin and see what happens, or I could go for a rookie who's probably not, or a young player who might take a while to develop. And I think that's where I kind of put Gallup for me. I think he's just a little bit too high. The other 2, I think you can't really argue too much on the position, up or down a few spots, but yeah.
He seems like definitely a good value to try and trade for, given as soon as people saw C, they just thought, oh man, I'm screwed. And if you can get him somehow over the course of the season for, somewhat pennies on the dollar, then all of a sudden in 2021, 2022, it's just a matter of like Stock said, like how far do you think ahead? And I definitely am not someone that thinks far ahead in Dynasty. I just assume that every Dynasty league is going to fold within a couple of years. Whether or not that actually happens, I have no idea. But so we're going to stick within the NFC East, and we're going to go to the Eagles receiving group. They've had a lot of new additions, a lot of changes. They were one of the most decimated wide receiver groups. The 2 main focuses for me here are Jalen Reagor, and also Zach Ertz. Is Reagor in your mind going to be the wide receiver 1? If he is going to be the wide receiver 1, how high are you willing to take him? So Kevin in his rankings has him at wide receiver 22, and at first it felt high. I actually have come around and I'm like, no, that totally makes sense. But in that ballpark. So where are you at with Reagor, and then we'll jump to Zach Ertz after that. It feels weird calling out people. So
yeah. I think he will be the one, but I'm so confused by the whole Eagle situation right now that I've almost just thought I don't want a slice of that pie right now. I'll focus my efforts elsewhere because I am so confused by it, because they brought in so many people like Marquise Goodwin and who else they bring in? They brought somebody else in as well, didn't they?
They got everyone there. Don't worry about that. They've gone from the complete opposite problem of having their backup quarterback AJ McCarron potentially playing wide receiver because they had no wide receivers last year. So they made sure they overcompensated that and just brought everybody and their bandwagon along to come and play wide receiver. I mean, you still got Greg Ward there, who I wouldn't discount. You've got Alshon Jeffrey still there. You've still got Deshaun Jackson there. You still got JJ Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, no one knows what that kid can do, but he's a second-round pick, so I wouldn't necessarily dispute that. Then you've got Rager. Then you've got I don't know. You've got a ton of wide receivers.
The two I drafted, Hightower and Cephas.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you've got Dallas Goedert because he's not going anywhere. You got Miles Sanders. He's going to take targets. I mean, I kind of am all out on Philly this year. I'll take Wentz if he's cheap. I'll take Goddard if he's cheap. I'm kind of out on everybody else. I just think there's so many routes to getting that wrong. I have Rager at 31. I think Rager can eventually win out. The draft capital is there. The talent is there. But I think it's going to take some time. Again, people are wanting to double down. JJ Arcega-Whiteside was a second-round pick a lot of people were excited on, and he barely saw the field, injuries or whatnot. It doesn't matter. The fact is, no time on the field, no time with the quarterback. And this is it's a mess. I mean, Wentz hasn't thrown to half of these guys on a consistent basis. The guy he's thrown to most is Jeffrey. And if he's fit, I wouldn't discount him being the one for a while until he's not fit, because we know that's going to happen at some point. So I just think it's a mess. Philadelphia's just not a place I want to be touching many fantasy assets right now. And again, if I can get Goddard cheap as a tight end, then I'll take that as a spin. And Wentz, if he's really cheap, and I'll take that. And Sanders, and that's it. I don't really want anyone else on that team because it's just too much of a mess. You're not going to get OTAs, which is going to affect Rager from really establishing the job. You're not going to get many preseason games, if any, to really establish what is going on there. And by then it's too late for dynasty startups anyway. So I'd be hedging on everybody. I just think there's better people to go after. I think for Rager in the end, I think it will work out well, but I wouldn't want to be investing a top 24 wide receiver on it because the history and track record there, it's too much. There's no one that has successfully done it for a period of time in Philly, especially under Doug Peterson. And I'll save Sanders for when we get to Sanders, but I just don't think anybody there. The coaches have proved that they can scheme and counter for anybody, regardless of who it is. Talent is important, but the scheme there is more important than the talent. And they proved last year they could bring guys off the practice squad and the street and still win the division. And I think that's my concern when you've got a team that are more scheme orientated, like the Patriots are, than they are talent orientated.
I feel like you just made the case for Wentz though. Like Wentz did this with scrubs, and he's had he's had some injuries, whatever. But now he has this plethora of talents, and if Rager doesn't get to come along, like that's fine. I'm hesitant on a lot of rookies, especially wide receivers this year. But then you still have Ertz. You have safety blankets in your two tight ends. If you can get Deshaun Jackson back, even to 70%, 80% of what he was, or Alshon back, I mean, to me, Wentz, he's not someone that is going super high in drafts. He's going high enough because of his age, especially in Dynasty. But all of a sudden, he's just getting weapons that are just going to get better and better. And fine, eventually, D-Jax and Alshon are gone, but you're still going to have these staple parts of that offense.
Yeah, and I think if he's available in 9th, 10th round of drafts is when I get interested. I've seen me going in the 7th and 8th, and that's a reach only on the strategy that I play on quarterbacks. Okay. But I think if you can get Wentz for the right price, absolutely, because you should buy into him. They've given him the contract. Don't be scared of Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is going to be almost like a Taysom Hill figure, but someone who's going to be competent to come in. It's not the same as a Jordan Love situation here. It's nothing to worry about for Wentz. They just need somebody for when he does get injured. So, yeah, I think there's a strong case for Wentz to be a top 7, top 8 QB this year, absolutely, with the upside to maybe push into that top 6.
Kevin, where are you at with Rager? He's obviously your guy.
Yeah, I really have come around on Rager, probably later than I should have. He's actually my wide receiver 2 below Lamb, passing Judy, who I love too, but I just think that outside of Rager, I'm not sold on Deshaun Jackson playing any more than like 6 games. Alshon Jeffrey might hit. I think he's going to hit the pup list. And there's 6 games right there, and then we'll see what happens after that. But after that, I mean, Arcega-Whiteside really just showed he didn't have a lot of time with Wentz, but really showed maybe he's just a guy. That remains to be seen. Greg Ward, he's one of my favorite, end of startup, buys, as far as a guy that you can get for free and get some production out of him. But Rager, I think he's got a real chance to be that perimeter playmaker for Wentz. And outside of, you got the tight ends and you've got Miles Sanders, you need somebody down the field, and Rager, talent wise, has the leg up on everybody else. So I pretty much side with the talent on this. And maybe, looking at the rankings, I think it was wide receiver 20. So that's pretty bullish, but I do believe in the talent and the draft capital. They went, I know Murf said about how Wentz has been doing this with pretty much nobodies, especially at the end of last season. I think it speaks to how thought of Rager is in that organization, that they're willing to spend that capital to get a guy to be their kind of centerpiece of their vertical game. So that's where I stand on Rager.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, makes sense. So let me get to Zach Ertz. So Stocks, I'm sorry that I keep passing you here, but Murf, you said that you're pretty low on him. So I want to know why you're low on him, because you and I are opposites. Like to me, he's still tight end 4. I don't know why you would put him below tight end 4. He's the 4th best tight end in the league. He's the most job security of any tight end that's not the top 3.
But what are you defining as job security? That he's going to be on the field, or that he's going to get targets?
I mean, there's going to continue. He is a safety blanket for Wentz. As long as he is on the field, he is going to be one of the higher targeted tight ends in the NFL. The only reason I don't have Andrews, that I have Andrews above him, is for touchdown upside. That's it. And even then, I think Zach Ertz has more security in his role in the offense than Andrews does, because Ravens are bringing other pieces. Ingram, just to talk about who's below him, Ingram's been injured. Hunter, I don't know what the hell to do with him. Waller, again, same thing. There's just more and more people coming in, and if I don't know how narrative-y this is. It probably is very narrative-y, but I like to think if I was the quarterback, what am I going to do? Zach Ertz is going to be my number 1 read for at least probably half the season. We just talked about Djax. Who knows what's happening with him? Alshon might be on the pup, and Rager is learning a new offense on the fly because there's not going to be any OTAs or potentially even camps. And so Zach Ertz to me is he's just money in the bank at the tight end position.
See, everyone gets really excited about Zach Ertz because 2 seasons ago he caught 120 odd balls and it was exciting, and he got all the other way. He broke the receptions record for a tight end and all this jazz. It was phenomenal. And I think last year everyone had him as a tight end 2. Maybe a tight end 3 at worst, and I was like, he'll be the tight end 5 because he's going to regress down to low 80 catches, and that's what happened because Dallas Goedert is a thing. Dallas Goedert is better in the red zone. He's better in the red zone than Ertz. He is a crisper route runner, in my opinion, than Ertz. This is a guy that he is no joke. They are well thought of, and he is the future at that organization at that position. It's not a 29-year-old Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, they've got an out on him in 2020. It's probably expensive. It's likely he'll return in 2021. After that, they don't owe him anything. He can get out for not a lot of money. At the end of 2021, nothing. They can get out for literally nothing. He's got 2 years. And then after that, and they've restructured his contract. So those last 2 years, they've done it so they can get out for next to nothing. So he's already taken a restructure, which means he can get out in 2021 for nothing. It's a win-win situation for both parties because they've got Dallas Goedert, who is the replacement, and he's going to be there for years. And Ertz can go and earn some money on free agency and go land somewhere else. Again, it's that uncertainty for me of where he goes. I don't think he catches 80 balls this year. I think that is a declining. I think he catches 75, 76 balls maybe, and it's good volume, and he's probably a tight end 6, tight end 7 for me, because I think his upside in the red zone is limited with Goddard. For me, the guys that are being slept on, Ian Thomas, to the check down artist of Teddy Bridgewater, he's being massively slept on far too much. That will correct by August. You've got people like Noah Fant massively getting slept on. He's going to jump up. Mike Gesicki, he's massively being slept on, probably too far. Give me Ingram over him, because Ingram at least has the upside. Yes, you're running the risk of injuries, but that offense is going to be fire this year in New York. And give me all the shares of any New York Giants player, because they're all undervalued with the exception of Barkley. I'll go for every single one of them. Give me Ingram. Give me Tate. Give me Shepard. Give me Slayton. I'll take them all. I'm quite happy. No problem.
My boy Slayton.
Give me Jones. I love Jones this year. I think Jones is a top 10 QB this year. Absolutely no problem at all. I think, and there were too many places that tight ends are being slept on. And I'm just not you need to invest in the tight end position. There's too many guys. Yeah. There's too many guys that will do a job. And the difference between taking Ertz at the draft capital what he's going to give you versus a guy like Gesicki or Thomas, who's practically free, you're getting him in the 11th or 12th round, or even the Jonnu Smith at that stage. It's not a massive jump. You'll probably make 1 point, 2 point per game difference by taking Ertz. And then you're sitting there thinking but if I take a running back here or a wide receiver, I'm making more than the 1 or 2 points per game I'm gonna make up. And it happens every year. And just not if you're gonna take an elite guy, take an elite guy. For me, Ertz is out of that elite tier now because his upside is massively capped by Goddard.
I knew it. Mic drop. I'm not sure I have anything else to say. I mean, I agree with you on a tight end strategy, and so it's always weird talking about these high end guys. I'm a very big believer that in Dynasty, tight ends are easy to trade for. People don't want to buy them. Therefore, if you ask for them as part of a trade, there's less hesitation to give them up. I may be completely wrong. I'm relatively new to Dynasty, but there's just always guys. I don't know. So I do agree with you in the sense that there's no reason to take him, but if we're going to be talking about rankings and where to position him, I respectfully disagree. I just think that he would be higher up, even with the Goddard thing. I still am happy to take 2 years of Wentz than take 2 years of an unknown other situation, even with Ingram. And I mean, hell, they tried to trade him. I really thought the Niners might try and make a move for him actually during the draft, which would have been insane, but it's besides the point.
Well, here's my rankings, right? So I have tight end 7, I think, or tight end 8. I've got literally one spot behind him, not just in tight end rankings, but overall rankings. Those two are paralleled because one, you've got a declining asset that's going to flame out, and one, you've got a rising update. People forget that Dallas Goedert was the tight end 11 or 12 last year. I mean, he's no joke. Yeah, he's not some guy just sitting behind. I mean, he's a guy, and he's just going to get more volume every year. He caught 50 balls last year. He's going to catch 60 this year. They're going to even that out because they have a succession plan. The Eagles are a very well-run organization. They're very smart. They're always planning for the future. They're always looking one step ahead. They're one of those 3 or 4 organizations that are just smarter than most organizations. And that's why I just see Goddard just getting more and more work. And Ertz will eventually flame out. And Ertz might have a great year this year, and he might be the tight end 4 in 2020. But after that, he's pretty much done. He's got very limited time left of that organization.
Makes sense. Okay, just because we're chalking along here with time-wise, you guys want to do Bobby Woods? You want to talk about Bobby Trees?
Let Stocks go.
Okay, let's go. So Stocks, are you a Bobby Trees fan? You like Robert Woods? Are you a Robert Woods fan? No,
I'm not a fan of Robbie Woods.
This
the reason I'm not a fan of Robert Woods, it's just I'm all about Cooper Kupp. I am massively about Cooper Kupp, and I don't like owning 2 slices of the same pie. So for me, Robert Woods is almost an irrelevant fantasy. The only time I ever own Robert Woods is when Murf and I are co-owning a team and we draft him. Just because if I'm going to grab a Rams wide receiver, I'm grabbing Cooper Kupp because I think he has the chance to be, top 5. He is elite at what he does, and the way they use him, especially now Gurley's gone, I can see his red zone targets becoming even higher because he'll take those Gurley red zone targets. So I'm all about getting Kupp, and therefore I don't want another Rams piece. So Robert Woods is, it doesn't matter, I'm not shirking on value here or anything, but the only time I think if I had a real need at wide receiver, then yeah, maybe I'd get him. But I think 28, where have you got him, Kevin? 54, so wide receiver 28. I think that's too low. I do think that is too low a little. I think probably around 24, end of the wide receiver 2s, maybe early 20s. But for me, I'm all about Kupp, so it's hard for me to comment on someone I don't own any shares of and literally never look his way, if that makes sense. I'm just about Kupp.
Stocks, you said everything I believe about all this, so I'm going to pass this over to you guys because we're completely in sync here. So, Kevin, I'm going to let you jump in here real quick, and then Murph.
Well, I love Robert Woods as far as just a supreme value in Dynasty, as far as somebody that just completely flies under the radar every single season. And in this offense, he's pretty much a lock, for 120 targets at the very least. And, I can see the Rams really just staying more too wide. At the end of last season, they were playing Higbee and Everett and those guys, and Johnny Munt as that run blocking tight end. So they were playing a lot of 2 tight end sets and really only having 2 wide receivers on the field. So that's pretty much leaves Kupp to win on the outside, which he can certainly do. I just like Robert Woods as far as being more of that steady, reliable, and in the guys that are around him that I've got ranked, I've got him as wide receiver 26. So just outside that wide receiver 2, he's in that Tyler Boyd, Stephon Diggs, Jarvis Landry range, and I really like him as far as a value. And yeah, he's a little bit older, but I think he still has a lot of shelf life on him. He's 28, but he wasn't really utilized too much in Buffalo. Like he's a young 28 for me. So I really do like Robert Woods.
Robert Woods, hot take here, is going to end up in redraft, health providing, with more fantasy points than Cooper Kupp this year.
Could totally see that.
What?
Because he's due the touchdown regression. This guy was a top 20 fantasy player last season with 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. This guy's that's gonna regress to 6 easily. Yeah, 1 was a rushing touchdown and 1 that's gonna regress to 6 because there's no Cooks there, there's no Gurley there. He's the second read in that offense. He's going to take the top off. He's going to have more yards than Cooper Kupp. I do agree that Kupp will end up with more touchdowns, especially in the red zone. I don't dispute that at all. But I think the receptions are going to be far closer because I think Kupp is pretty much at the top of his receptions kind of peak. I don't think you can give him many more targets and many more receptions. They're going to go to Woods. Most of that workload that was with Cooks last year is going to go to Woods because, as Kevin said, they're going to play 2 tight end sets. Cam Akers isn't going to be ready for that full workload, and he is a young 28. I think Woods has got. First of all, he's a value. In redraft, he's going in the 5th round. I mean, book that. I'm taking him all day long in the 5th round. Like, I'll just auto pick that right now in every single draft. If he's in the 5th round, I'm taking him. I don't really care who else. Pretty much, you just slam that every single pick, 5th round, Robert Woods, because he's going to be a top 12 wide receiver this year, or he's going to be there or thereabouts. And then you factor in everything else about him, that he's on a great offense that puts up a lot of fantasy points, that always has 2 tight ends relevant. The only reason he's in this discussion of being low is his age. That's it. But he can play 6 years. It's not unheard of for a 34-year-old wide receiver to be playing in the NFL. For me, he these are some of the guys I've got him above in my rankings. Adam Thielen, T.Y. Hilton, Stephon Diggs, Hollywood Brown, Keenan Allen, Odell Beckham Jr., Tyler Boyd, Jarvis Landry, Tyler Lockett, Cortland Sutton, They're all players that I have Robert Woods high. Robert Woods is higher than all of those players for me because he's just got a very safe floor, a very high ceiling, and a perfect opportunity. Van Jefferson is not a threat, and nor is Josh Reynolds to what Woods can do.
I just took him as my wide receiver 1. Actually, I'm doing a best ball right now going on, and I just took him as my wide receiver 1 in the 5th round. So yeah, I would definitely. It wouldn't shock me if Robert Woods, finish ahead of Cooper Kupp as far as wide receivers this year. Not at all.
No.
It would shock me. Last year, I feel like we just forget that Cooper Kupp was the wide receiver 1 pretty much the last 2 years for the first half of the year. I mean, I think he was wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 2 years ago, and then he injured his ACL. And then last year through 6 to 8 games, I think he was a wide receiver 1 or 2. Dude's amazing. I don't know what the drop off was. The Rams offense just they were terrible down the stretch. I don't really understand what happened last year, but I also hate Goff, so I was just smiling the entire time, laughing and giggling like a schoolgirl. I was just so excited.
Listen, I love Cooper Kupp, but he is 2 rounds more expensive than Robert Woods, and he's not worth the value. He doesn't give you that much more. I mean, he'll give you potentially more. I don't think this year, but maybe in the future he gives you more, which is why I do have Kupp higher than Woods in my Dynasty rankings. But hey, listen, if you're going to invest in running backs early and you miss Kupp and you can get Woods, it's a no-brainer for me. I don't think their difference is not 2 rounds plus. It's minimal at best. The big argument in Dynasty for Kupp is his age, and that he has a very safe target floor. So if you're playing PPR, and maybe in PPR formats, he might just smidge Woods just on those receptions, although I think it's a lot closer than people will think. I think they'll be differed by about 10, and I think Bobby Woods will end up with more yards.
You sold me. You've definitely sold me that, like, going into my actual drafts, like once we get closer to the season and not just all the dynasty nuts that we are, that I'll be making an effort to go and get them.
Just auto pick him 5th round. Just auto pick that.
Yep.
All right, so there were some other wide receivers I wanted to touch base on. We're already past the hour mark, so I'm just going to punt on them because I'm sure we're going to come back to someone like Ruggs. We'll probably come back to Alan Lazard because we're going to have that was something I wanted to ask Kevin about just because he's lower on him than I am. So we're going to switch to running backs finally. Get back to the stuff that we really want to do. I'm going to take a quick real break here. Damn it, he did the same thing as I was. And well, once Murf's back, I really want to jump into we're going to go top to bottom just like we did. And we're going to look at Kevin's running back rankings and see where we go from there. So Miles Sanders. I think we got to start there, Kevin. I think that probably have 2, maybe 3 of us that are wondering why you have him so high. I want you to sell us on Miles Sanders, and when Murf gets back, he'll I'm sure have his opinions on it too.
With the lack of receiving talent in the offense for the Eagles, I'm not worried as far as them bringing in anybody else, be it Carlos Hyde or whoever they've been banning about names to kind of be the backup there. I'm not entirely worried about Boston Scott, even though he's going to definitely have a role there in Philadelphia. But as far as a 3-down guy, Miles Sanders, I absolutely love him and think the sky is the limit for him. You're talking about a guy that, at Penn State, they were saying, oh, well, we had these 2 backs in Sanders and Saquon Barkley, and the case could have been made, we like Miles Sanders, more than Saquon Barkley. But, Miles Sanders landing in that offense where they clearly want to make him the focal point of the offense and make that offense, he's the engine. So with the solid offensive line that they still have, they're getting older. I just think he has a lot of receiving upside. I think we saw at the end of last season that they were willing to kind of lean on him heavily, and he showed out. That kind of leads me to with that lofty ranking, because I have him above, Nick Chubb, who I think Kareem Hunt's going to eat into a lot of his work. Joe Mixon, where, he could, at least this year, we might be on the cusp of a holdout. And we have no idea about that offense in Cincinnati, how they're really going to operate with Joe Burrow there. Mixon's going to be a big part of that. But, and then below that, the two rookies, Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor. So, that's what led me to rank Sanders as high as I did. I couldn't see myself ranking Sanders below Chubb, below Mixon, below those rookies. Dobbins is in there too. I couldn't put him that low, so that's what put Sanders at 6 for me.
Murph, you seem to feel the strongest on this, so let me know.
I can't even put Sanders in my top 12. I love Sanders, by the way. I snapped him in a load of rookie places. I think I got him at 14. There's a few reasons for this. Let's just go over some big things. And I've talked about it, so I'm not going to rehash. Scheme more important than talent in Philadelphia. They've proven this time and time again. So much so, do you know in the tenure of Pedersen there, how many times a running back has rushed for 100 yards?
I would say probably a handful.
Yeah.
5. 5 times in 4 years. 5 times in 4 years, a running back has got over 100 yards in a game rushing. Now, yes, there are more ways to get 100 yards, i.e. a combination of receiving and rushing, but that's a massive cap on your upside if you're not going to be doing the 100 yards a game. That automatically, if you're looking at guys that average 80, 90, 100 yards a game, you're already coming to half a dozen players that are getting close to that average. And then you've got the others getting receiving side. For me, all of the 3 rookies, Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, I don't think I didn't put Dobbins. I put Miles Sanders ahead of Dobbins purely with the way that offense is structured. But I've got players like Derrick Henry who's just being criminally slept on. People think like, okay, he's not a receiving running back. I mean, he proved that last year that doesn't overly matter if he gets the volume he's getting. Austin Eckler's being slept on a little bit here, I think. I take the point on Nick Chubb, and that's probably where you could have an argument with him. Aaron Jones is being slept on here. I mean, people see him as he's going to be out of there next year. If he has the year he had last year or even close to it, there's absolutely no way, and he's being slept on. I like Sanders a lot. I think he's got a very safe floor. I think he's got I think he's a safe player, and the age works and everything, and that's why, I'm at 13, 14 on him. You could probably convince me to get to 12, maybe even 11. I can't go higher than that. There's just no way because he's capped. He's capped. I can't see him doing 100 yards receiving in the game due to all the players and all the talent they've got there. And we've talked about the safety blankets at the tight end. So he's not going to get that luxury that other running backs are going to get of being the primary receiver in the short distance yardage. Then the fact that they just don't have receivers. They always fill guys. Carlos Hyde is going to be an Eagle. Whether it's happened yet or whether it's going to happen, it's going to happen. He's going to take carries. Boston Scott's going to take carries. They'll probably sign someone off the street that will take carries. I wouldn't even be shocked if CJ Anderson turned up and took carries there because it's what they do every single year. Every single year, they get a guy who just takes carries. It's what they do. It's because they running back by committee is the design of the coach. He prefers to rotate backs. He wants them healthy for playoffs and deep runs. It worked when they won the Super Bowl. And his upside is always going to be capped. Very safe floor. Couldn't argue taking him inside the top 12 because of that. But he's never going to give you these dynamic, huge point weeks that others are going to get. So if you want to shoot for the moon, there are guys you're going to need to take over him. And if you want to just play it safe and have a consistent running back that will get you, 15, 18 points a week, he's not a bad option. Like, he will do that for you consistently most weeks because he'll do 60 yards rushing and 35 yards receiving with sort of 3 or 4 catches and it will be fine. And maybe a touchdown, or, he'll have some weeks where he'll get more catches and carries. And, it will always work out that he'll end up around about 100 yards a game and a couple of catches, but it's never going to be spectacular box score. He's not going to be a guy that rushes for 220 and 3. It's just not going to happen. And that's why I just can't put him that high.
I don't know if I can disagree. I think he has a very high ceiling, and like you said, I think to me it all just comes down to the RBBC. Everybody talks about Carlos Hyde. I don't understand why like Devonta Freeman isn't part of that conversation. He just fits the skill set that like they're kind of looking for. They want these hybrid backs that can do everything, and that's clearly him. But he's a whole other conversation because I don't know what the hell's going on, why no one has signed him yet. So
that's fair.
So moving into this, I mean, we're staying in the same range of running back. And Kevin, you have Josh Jacobs below Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, and J.K. Dobbins. I don't know that I disagree. But I can't find myself putting Jacobs at least below all three of them. But at the same time, they all just seem to kind of be in a tier. Stocks, what do you think about this? Do you think that Jacobs should be above, below? He's right there in the middle. Where are we at?
I'm the same boat as you guys. I think I agree, but I'm not sure completely why. So my oars aren't going full speed on this, if that makes sense, to do a boat analogy. I think for me, the reason I have Jacobs below them is because of the talent of the other three and the landing spot. Yeah, they all landed in places where there is another back there. Williams with CEH, and then Mack with Taylor, and Ingram with Dobbins. But they're all on, the Colts have got one of the best offensive lines, and Jonathan Taylor, if he can run like he did in college behind that line, he can usurp Mack real quick, and it could be sort of 5-6 weeks in, and Jonathan Taylor's the guy. And then he's running, like I said, behind one of the best offensive lines on a team with Phillip Rivers, who are clearly in a win now. Let's do this year. So they're going to be a better outfit than the Raiders. I think the Ravens, I don't know. Dobbins is my boy, so I want to say that he's just going to blow Mark Ingram away, but that's not the case. Mark Ingram was a captain of the team. On our last pod, our guest said that he was shown on the sidelines in the huddle with Lamar doing his bit as a team captain. So even if Dobbins does get more work, Ingram's still going to be there this year. That's not going to be a thing. But then Dobbins translates into that system so well. I think I'd rather suck up the half a season of less production than he might get than Jacobs to know next year. In the next couple of years, he's going full ham on a team that is built fast, is built to run, and that's what they do. And then CEH, Mahomes wanted him. He asked Reed to draft this dude. So your quarterback asks your coach to go and get someone. Williams is knocking on. Yeah, he's going to get carries, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is obviously the guy they want in the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are the best football team in the league by a long, long way at the moment. So I'm taking all three of these guys ahead of Jacobs because of the outlook, not because of right now, but for the start of next season. Because if you've taken one of these guys in a startup draft or even in a rookie draft, you're one of the worst teams, especially in your rookie draft. You're one of the worst teams anyway. So you're probably in a rebuild unless you traded for the 101. And if you did trade for the 101, congratulations, because you've robbed your league. Because unless you give up the world and you're in a rebuild, you shouldn't be trading the 101 because you're getting a perennial talent. So if you are in a rebuild, you're not looking to win this year. So wait for next year when, if you do happen to get a 102, 103 and you need two running backs and you've got yourself a JT and then next year you get Etienne, you're set for me. So I'm looking for next year on these three guys ahead of Jacobs because he's not in a good as team as the other three.
I'm glad you like him as a 101, Edwards-Helaire. Do you know who else was a 101 rookie pick? His name was Josh Jacobs. This guy, by the way,
I'm not disagreeing. He's a good player, but he's in the worst.
He was the Resound 101 last year, and he is a player who went in and he absolutely smashed it before injury. And that injury at the end of the season, it's not a contact injury. It's nothing to be overly worried about, concerned it's going to affect his health long term. He did that without really catching the football either, which is something that they're going to do a lot more. Took him a bit of time to get up to speed with that. But Josh Jacobs didn't get run down in college. He was, preserved. Only really worked half a schedule in college. There's plenty of tread on those tires. He's in an offense that is designed to run the football, to move the chains. Yes, okay, everyone talks about Gruden and his quarterback, and he just signed all these shiny new toys. But, Gruden just signed them on 40 times. We know that, right? We saw the draft board in the background with the 40 times. I've watched John Gruden and the way he coaches, and the key to his successful teams is to have a power running back who moves the chains. And then what they do is they design scheme and plays that open up wide receivers to make those big moves downfield, and then they just pound the rock. And it's that kind of spread offense mixed in with a strong running game. And Josh Jacobs is in the perfect landing spot to really exploit that. Like he is a guy realistically that can get 270, 280 touches this year, the year after. Who's behind him? Jalen Richard? Please, he's got nothing to worry about. Josh Jacobs is easily the one who, he's the 6'7" running back off this board because his floor is ridiculously high. Like he's so well protected. Injuries not really a massive concern, not a massive workload up until last season, and he's only shown a limited amount of what he can do. Given another year in the NFL, I mean, he's got 1 year on all of the guys you just talked about, and I love all of them. But J.K. Dobbins is unfortunately, potentially, and this is the risk, he's potentially going to be found out because if they run the same scheme as they are now for 3 years, coaches will just get smart to that and just shut it down. So he'll need to offer something a little bit different in order to really reach his potential. Taylor, his biggest concern is fumbles. I absolutely love Taylor. I'm plant my flag and absolutely love Taylor, and he's going to have a change of quarterback next year. And, the way that they're structured is to get the ball as far downfield as possible and then back it up with the run. Taylor's going to be great, and he's a top 12 running back for sure. But there's this little situation there we've got to work out as to who the quarterback's going to be next year and how that looks like. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is great, but he's not going to be the first read. He is a guy that is going to be targeted, but he's not heavy on the run. He's a receiving back. And they will always have somebody who will take away carries from him that will limit his upside a little bit. Now, if he's catching 60, 70 passes in the backfield, then that could be the one of those three who usurps Jacobs. But until that happens, I'll take Jacobs all day long. The floor's safe. The ceiling is high. I think he's the one that you can really put trust in that he'll deliver results for the next 2, 3, 4 years for sure.
Kevin, where are you at with this?
Now, I do like, and I'll start this with a question to all three of you. So just say, hypothetical, Josh Jacobs came out in this past draft. Where would you put him among the running backs that came out as far as in a draft order? So, Edwards-Helaire, Taylor, Dobbins, Akers, Swift, et cetera, et cetera. Where would you slot him
on talent?
With their respective landing spots. Let's do that because it's so difficult.
Yeah.
But respective landing spots for me, probably 4th or 5th. I can't decide if I want him or Swift.
For me, I put Jacobs behind Taylor and ahead of Swift and Dobbins and Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Wow. Okay. I'd probably have him 4th. I'd have him behind the 3 guys we just talked about, but ahead of Swift just because, Kerryon's injured a lot and stuff. But I think he's still... It's a situation there where no one knows what's going to happen with Swift. As good as Swift is, there's an issue there. So I think I'd have him 4th.
Okay. Yeah, because I'd have him, I would say probably RB 4 or 5, and you could sway me either way like that. He is completely insulated as far as his standing on the team and the fact that he's going to get those carries, and he's pretty safe in that regard. I understand the scheme fit and what the Raiders want to do and how they want to have that power running game with the spread look too, and that's just kind of how I do look at the talent of all 3 backs, and they're very interchangeable. Because when I was going through my rankings, I actually had Jacobs ahead of Taylor and ahead of Dobbins, and then just some tinkering and going back and forth on those guys. They were pretty much interchangeable for me, and I kind of landed on Jacobs at 12, just at the very back end of the RB1 for me. But don't get me wrong, I do love Josh Jacobs, and I really like his upside in the Raiders offense. He doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires. He's very fresh as far as running backs go that didn't get a lot of usage in college. So Yeah, this is not a slight really toward Jacobs. I'm not trying to just push him down the board, because you're 1 through 12, you're getting great, running backs, across the board there. So yeah, that was kind of my thought process on Jacobs there, just kind of in that 10 to 12 mix there. And you could make the case, obviously, 9 through 12, any one of those 4 guys being ahead of each other.
Makes sense. I think we're all kind of on the same page, and it definitely, when you asked your question, that very much sold me to be like, hey, actually, I would have Jacobs below these guys. I want to jump to a much less certain RB situation. So Leonard Fournette, you have him at RB 17. I think that actually is probably an appropriate range. With Dynasty, it's so up in the air just because they did not exercise his 5th-year option. He has his injury issues, but when he plays, he's badass, and they give him a ton of carries, and he has a lot of positive regression coming in his way, touchdown. So I don't know. Murph, you specifically called this out. You wanted to know why it was so high. I think that was also relative to the overall rank. So I'm going to let Murph go, and then Kevin, let's hear your rebuttal, and we'll go from there.
I'm literally the most contrarian person on this podcast. It's me on an island, and you three are all just kind of getting on, going oh yeah. And maybe I'm just massively just out in the weeds, but if nothing else, I'm just playing devil's advocate. No, I'm not a Fournette fan. If you've ever listened to our podcast, I've never been a Fournette fan. I think he was a guy that was overdrafted in the NFL draft. I think, given the fact his 5th-year option has not been picked up, I've proved right in this. The guy had too many injuries coming into the league to be considered a guy who could handle a full 16-game workload. That has sufficed to be the case. We are seeing character concerns galore that have led him to have his contract guarantees voided as a result. We've seen the ugly scenes of him on field having fights, etc. And I'm not saying that is a thing that is commonplace and he's a bad dude. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what comes out on the field and what's projected to everybody. He's my running back 26. He doesn't have a 5th-year option. He's not going to be there next year. So who is picking him up? So then all of a sudden it's that crapshoot. What are we getting? He doesn't play 16 games. So you've always got that question mark of, is he even going to be there when my playoffs begin? Because 3 of the last 4 years he hasn't, or 2 of the last 3 years. You've got a player who, he can catch the ball and he can be dynamic, but those boom and bust games, there's no consistency with the guy. His legacy, if he was to literally flame out after this season, would be a guy who never reached his potential. And I don't think he'll ever reach his potential. And he'll never, ever catch up to where he was drafted in the NFL draft. He was not a guy in the same class as a Barkley, as Zeke. He's nowhere near that talent level. He should never have been a 1st-round player. And that went to him. And you could see it. The way that he approached the game, I don't think he's, the most dedicated to his craft as some of these other guys are. And I think someone will pick him up next year. Someone will get a good deal on him and he'll do a job. But I think he goes into a committee. I think he's a guy who is a perfect committee back. And I think this year they know, listen, Jacksonville, we all know Jacksonville are not going to make the playoffs this year. And that's not because I've got anything against Jacksonville, but they are not in a position to really challenge for the playoffs this year, barring something magical happening in the next few weeks and months. But realistically, it would shock everybody if they made the playoffs.
Yeah.
So are they really going to run Fournette into the ground? They probably will do for the first half of the season. But then what they'll do is they'll try and work out who's our back next year. Is it going to be a Chris Thompson who's been there to take away catches out of that backfield for Fournette? Is Raquel Armstead really the guy that we drafted? Is he someone that we can line ahead with next season? Because if he is, guess what? He's getting the ball, not Fournette, towards the end of the season to build up game reps and game speed and practice. And that's my worry is Fournette this year is a declining asset at the best, but at the worst, he could be unplayable at times. He could literally not see the ball. And then where he goes next is a crapshoot into maybe a committee role, maybe a secondary back, maybe a 3rd down back. Who knows? I don't like buying guys because they were first round talents. I buy guys based on what is going ahead, and their draft, where they were drafted, isn't irrelevant because draft capital is important. But we've seen the fact that Jacksonville are not in on this guy. They've not bought up his contract. They know he's going. He's not going to be there. So his draft capital is irrelevant. He's not got the investment that he once did. So for me, I'm just out. I can't take. I don't think I've ever drafted Leonard Fournette. I can't say I've ever regretted never drafting Leonard Fournette. I can't say I'm ever going to draft him again. Maybe at some point he might fall to such a ridiculous value that I think I have to. But you're telling me right now, if he fell into the 10th round of a dynasty startup draft, I probably wouldn't draft him. I'd probably take someone else.
That's intense. That's a bold.
That's a pretty damning indictment, right?
I get it. I get all the concerns about Fournette. I really do. At least for this year, yeah, maybe they beat him into the ground. I don't think his receiving game is going to be as it was last year. Probably not, because I think Laviska Shenault probably takes a good part of that away. But I think he does land somewhere. Say maybe he lands with the Jets. Some dumb team will take him because, if, they see Leonard Fournette, he was a first round guy. We got to throw gobs of money, and, Le'Veon Bell's not going to be there forever. And I could totally see that would be the most Jetsiest move for them to take Leonard Fournette. I could totally see that 100%. But, the touchdowns will come up at least for this year. But, like I said, very valid concerns regarding his character. And yeah, he could potentially flame out. I get that. Maybe I was a little bullish in, Leonard Fournette, but he is a declining asset. I will say that, but I think he's definitely got. I think he had 3 touchdowns last year. That's just incredibly stupid as far as for someone like that. And then Jacksonville's not going to be very good, but he still should score more touchdowns than 3. I will say that. So at least this year, try to get something for him if you have him. But I'll go into the rankings and check them out, and maybe I'll move Fournette down a little bit, but. Yeah, he's probably more of a declining asset at this time.
So I got one last call out for you, and this one's personal. And this is going to be, in the same range. So you have RB17, you have Leonard Fournette. At RB19, you have Aaron Jones, your own Aaron Jones. Just so everyone knows, after I won the Scott Fish Bowl, Kevin sent me an Aaron Jones jersey because Aaron Jones was by far at least my MVP of the win, not my MVP of the season. And yet you have him at RB19. What was he last year? RB2, RB3? Yeah, I need you to defend this, and then the rest of us can at least see what points you make and go from there.
Well, as far as Aaron Jones, I mean, I don't think it's any secret that Green Bay wants to get to more of a run-first offense and use that to set up the pass with Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to be Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball around anymore, but I think the Aaron Jones, I think a lot of his game is going to be at least shared in the backfield because they still have Jamal Williams, but now they have A.J. Dillon, who's, he's going to be a grinder for them. I think that's going to take a lot of his touchdown upside away. I could see a scenario where outside of Aaron Jones or outside of Devontae Adams, that Aaron Jones could be lead the team in targets outside of Adams. I will say that. But as far as Aaron Jones, they've got an out. He's not signed after this year, so I don't think if he has a great year this year, Green Bay's not going to sign him for $10 million or more than that, whatever he's going to command. That's not what they're going to do. They drafted Dillon to be the guy to step in as their after Aaron Jones running back. So yeah, we could see Aaron Jones maybe pop. I don't know if he's going to be that definitive 3-down guy outside of Green Bay. I don't know if I can see that. because his injury history is pretty checkered. I will say that. I'm not entirely sold on Aaron Jones as a dynasty asset post this year. Just at least this year, I think, some of that he's going to lose a little bit of, we're going to have some touchdown regression, I would say for sure, with him. And then Dylan's going to take a little bit off the top there. So that's where I put Aaron Jones. And yeah, it's not great, and Packer fans may not like me for it, but it is what it is.
I'm calling my shot right now. If they don't re-sign him, Niners are going to take him because they're going to dump Coleman. They're going to dump Mostert because he's older. And then who knows what's going to happen with Jet McKinnon. All of a sudden they take on Aaron Jones. Even if he's not like at the contract he wants, he'll want to go to a Super Bowl winning team that had just won the 2020 or 2021 Super Bowl, whatever it is. All right, you guys, Murf, Stocks, what do you guys got on Aaron Jones? I want to know here because RB19 to me is criminally low.
Yeah, I think it is low, but then I think he's in exactly the same boat as Fournette. I think they're almost guys that you want to try and sell sort of 6 games into this season when they've started really hot because of the consideration. I think, LaFleur wants to run that team. Kevin hit the nail on the head, basically, with the running back room and how they want to go forward running the ball more. But I think it is a little low. I think maybe 14-ish. But I just think the touchdown regression comes, and I think they hyper target Devontae Adams this year because Aaron Rodgers is sick of what just happened in the draft, and I think he just throws the ball at his boys so many times that Aaron Jones's targets, he might well lead the targets outside of Adams, but I think the amount of times Adams gets the targets, I think it could hurt him that in the receiving game as well. And Murph might have another point on this, but I think Kevin's on the money.
I have Jones sort of hovering at the RB1 fringe, 12, 13. There is that concern that he doesn't get signed, but if he has a year like he does this, like last year, he's getting re-signed. And I'm not convinced that the Packers drafted Dylan in any form of a plan. I think they just drafted because they'd gone for beers beforehand, because that was the worst draft. It's the worst draft I've ever seen. It doesn't make any sense. I think every Packers fan will agree with me on that. I don't think they looked at that and said, oh, yeah, we're taking him to replace Jones. I think they took him because they just rated players on their board and they just picked the best available without thinking of need or anything. And sure, they like Dylan, and I've got no doubt that Dylan will usurp Jamal Williams. Absolutely no problem. Jamal Williams is a declining player, and fine, he'll be the RB2 on the team, and they'll both eat, and they'll both have a very happy, prosperous career together. And maybe that's what caps. That's what caps Jones for me. But there's absolutely no way if he runs in another 16 touchdowns, there's absolutely no way he's not getting re-signed to a big contract. It's going to happen, and yeah, I'm not worried about Jones. I think he's going to be fine. His upside is only capped because of LaFleur's run back by committee approach. That's the only thing that caps it, not that he's going to be anywhere in 12 months' time.
I got to agree with that. But that's just where my mindset's at. If you have A. Jones on your roster, and then just try and make a priority to try and get Dylan just in the event that like you're wrong. And I like the idea of 6 weeks in, go and selling him. But at least for me going into this season or going into, a startup or something like that, like I say this, but I actually have not drafted him in any startups despite how much I love him and I want to hug him and I've donated money to his charity or someone has in my name and like all that stuff. So I'm all about it, all about him. So we're at that hour and 39-minute mark. So I think we're actually going to skip, if that's okay, we're going to skip tight ends. We'll skip quarterbacks. I think those are all going to come up in future shows anyway. So for me, I want to say thank you guys so much for coming on. Kevin will lead us out, but thank you guys so much for coming on. I have it's so amazing knowing you guys and having gotten to meet you and getting to talk to you and playing leagues and stuff. And I don't want to hold you guys up here too longer. So Kevin, I'll let you say your piece and then you guys can drop your Twitter handles and stuff.
Yeah, I really appreciate guys, Stocks and Murf for jumping on. It's great to meet you guys. And I did watch your show with Jason Moore. That's one I wanted to make sure I caught and loved it. And I'm glad to get you guys on here, and let us know where we can find all your work and, Twitter handles, and go from there.
So you can find us at 5YardRush on Twitter. You can find me personally, at Murf_NFL if you want to catch my word there, but I kind of control both handles for the most part, just to confuse people, because I like doing that. Check out the website at 5YardRush. You can find the book, the Fantasy Football Playbook. Again, it's like $7, I think $7-ish now if you order it before June 1st. So get in there with that discount. It will rise to less than $10. It's still not going to be expensive after June 1st, but if you want that little discount, you can get it now. You can find our website at 5yardrush.co.uk, and you'll find a lot of work from all of our writers and us there. You can find us on Instagram. All of it's at 5YardRush, Facebook, everything. We really appreciate coming on. This is a real honor and privilege, and I hope my contrarian takes weren't too contrarian enough to not get a second invite at some point, but it's been an absolute pleasure and a hoot. And we're just a sociable bunch, and just get in contact with us. Tell me I'm wrong, I don't mind, and let's just talk. We just love making new friends and building a community, and that's kind of what we stand for.
All right.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having us on. It's been a blast.
Very cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. And thank you all for watching and later on listening, because this will be, if you're listening to us here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, we thank you for that. And we'll be back next week. Take care, everybody. For Gary, Murf, and Stocks of the 5 Yard Rush podcast and 5yardrush.com, we thank you for listening, and have a great day or night.